Hello, and welcome to Talk Art. My name is Michael Endicott, and I'll be your host today as we explore the artistic process of prominent Bay Area artists. Talk Art is sponsored by Silicon Valley Open Studios. And every year, in the first 3 weekends of May, artists up and down the peninsula throw open their studios for the public. I urge you to take advantage of those opportunities, and I think you'll have a great time if you check out the artists in your area. And it's a great thing to do with the entire family. For more information on the artists and when their studios are open and where they're located, check out our website at www.svos.org. Our guest tonight is Judy Kramer. She's a local nature photographer and is the past president of the Palo Alto Camera Club. You can often see her work at the Pacific Art League and also a gallery house on California Avenue in Palo Alto. Welcome, Judy.
Thank you very much.
I'm so glad you're here, but I'm really curious right off the bat as to why you think of yourself as a late bloomer.
Well, because I was a late bloomer. I didn't start until I was 62. I started because I had been working with a nonprofit that had to close. It had been a very intense project, and when that was over, I really wanted to do something that was more nourishing to me. So I started learning a little bit more about photography. I joined the Palo Alto Camera Club in June of 2005, and that started my photographic life.
Oh, wonderful. So you say 2005, that's kind of the crossover period between analog film and digital film. Do you have a preference in what kind of photography you like to do?
Well, I probably, without digital photography, I probably wouldn't be a photographer. It just enables you to do so many things. And I kind of the first thing I realized, well, I actually had taken some film photos from a trip to New Zealand and Australia, and I was putting together a book, a scrapbook, and I was putting the photos in. I'd send them to the drugstore, and they were 6x4, and to get them to fit on the page, sometimes I'd trim them. And then I discovered that when they were cropped, some of them actually looked better, and it was like, oh, that's interesting. And then a little later, my daughter was married, and at that time, people had digital cameras. My husband had a digital camera at that time. And we had a lovely photo that a friend took of my daughter and her new husband and in the church, but the light was coming from above, and so there was a little shadow on her upper lip, and it looked like she had a mustache. Well, you can't have a wedding photo with your bride having a mustache. So my husband went in with an early version of Photoshop and changed the pixels, and that was when the light bulb went off. Like, you actually you don't have to take just what comes back from the camera store or the drugstore. You can have an impact on it. And so now I have, I take the pictures, I work on them on the computer, and I print them on my own printer. So I have total control over the creative process.
There's no doubt about it that digital certainly makes it easy to do and also cheaper to do, and you don't have the chemicals to wrestle with. As a photographer, you're also an artist, and we're supposed to work on inspiration. How have you been inspired to do photography?
Well, I think about a quote that I read from a photographer, Jan Artus Bertrand, who said, "A photographer is a witness to the art that is the earth." And that really resonated with me. So I call my endeavor Earth Witness Photography, because I feel like that's what I'm doing. I'm seeing what's there, and being a witness to it.
And so I noticed that you have a lot of photographs about flowers.
Yes.
Did that capture your interest? Was it the color, the shapes, or what was
Well,
it that?
I've always loved wildflowers. Even before I was a photographer, we'd go up in the Sierra and I'd like to identify them, and we took an alpine botany class. And so it was just natural that I would want to take close-ups of wildflowers. But I didn't really know how to do it. And it was a year later that I took a weekend workshop in Carmel Valley that was about close-up wildflower photography. And I had to rent a macro lens for my camera. And the first time I'm down on the ground, I'm looking at this beautiful California poppy bud with dewdrops on it, and I just fell in love. So that I have loved taking wildflower photography photographs and kind of honing how to do it so that I get what I want, and I really enjoyed that.
So you brought some macros here
I
to
did.
show us
I did.
and demonstrate.
Right. So this is a little bird's eye gilia with the bee on it, and you know the flower itself is, I don't know, probably that big. And if you look at this photo, there's no question.
We have a different photo up on the TV
Right.
screen, so we should talk about that one for the moment.
Okay, we can do that. The bee on the California poppy. When you're out, I'm always looking for bees. I'm always looking for pollinators. You know, even if the pollinator's not there, you're still seeing the relationship with the pollinator. But, and I actually did some manipulation in Photoshop because it was a very messy background. So I just made it all black and I turned it a little bit. So you see the poppy is open and the bee is busy getting pollen.
Actually, I love the connections that you make here between how nature is working as
Right.
well as the beauty.
Right. Well, I sometimes think of myself as a photo naturalist, at least around wildflowers.
And was it the color here that particularly caught your eye and the way it's
color,
popping?
and I mean, there are blue dicks around a lot in the spring, but it has many different parts to it, and they were, you have very little depth of field when you're doing close-up photography, so they were all in about the same plane, so I could get more of it in focus.
All right, so let's take a look at a couple more. You brought a demo that I want to get to
Right.
also, so we should look through these a little more quickly
Okay.
maybe.
Well,
but this is fabulous in the pattern of the wing and the
Right,
lines in this photograph.
Right, and it's a challenge getting butterflies because they don't always stay still. But these were wandering around these mule ears. It was at Rancho Cañada del Oro in Santa Clara County. And so I just sat on the ground and I probably took, 20, 30 photographs of, it's a northern checker spot. And I always try to get the eyes in focus because you always want to do that when you're getting anything that's live. For some reason, human beings relate to eyes. And I really like that one. And I just love cream cups. They're just so delicate, and they have those very interesting, the stamens in the center, and then you have the shadow of the stamens, and the little yellow
That's
hearts.
beautiful.
So thank you. And false baby stars, they're just lovely. And so if I can, I always try to get a color background. So this was a clump of them. So I got the 3 and the color background.
So is that Monet or Manet that I'm seeing in the background here?
Good question. Fiddleneck, another opportunity. There were a lot of them. So I found one that I could get parallel to, so I could get it in focus, and then so that there was a background that was yellow.
Excellent. Oh, the ladybug.
The ladybugs. Oh, I love ladybugs. And this one was just posing for me. I took about, I don't know, a lot of photos. I was sitting down on the ground and another hiker came by and said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Oh, it's okay. I'm a photographer."
Everything's okay. The photographer's by the side of the road.
Right. And so
Wow, look at
another
that.
little, these are just tiny flowers, but they have those beautiful stamens and the little red. Flowers are designed to attract the pollinator. So those little red lines going into the center tell the pollinator where to come.
Excellent.
And another ladybug. So this one was kind of
beautiful.
a side view.
Kind of looks like it's a lot of effort though for that ladybug to hang
I
on
think
there.
it probably
That's great.
is. Probably is. And yellow carpets are in particular environments, and but they just, I mean, look at those little white, the little white ring around the outside. I mean, how precious is that? It looks like a little button. So
excellent.
they're,
Okay.
again, they're really tiny.
All right, so those are a wonderful overview of sort of
Right.
what you see out there, particularly
Right.
bringing the size, but you also brought some wonderful macro photographs here to talk about.
So to talk a little bit about what I think about when I'm out in the field. And so this photo, it's really clear to me as the photographer and to the viewer what it was I wanted you to look at. So it's this section in here. And partly you have this soft background, so there's nothing there that's distracting. You have this line coming in, so it kind of brings your eye in. The lightest part of the photo is the part where I want you to look. Human eyes go to bright areas. And it's in the upper third, pretty much the upper third of the photo, so your eye comes in and kind of goes around this area.
Do you generally follow the rule of thirds?
I don't always, but I sometimes do. So, and the thing that's in focus, if this had been what was in focus, you would have been very confused about this photo. So these are all cues that you give the viewer to look at the photo and have the eyes go where you want. This is obviously not a macro photograph, but I included it because it's an example of a large depth of field. So the flowers down here are in focus, the flowers through here are in focus, and it starts to lose focus, but it's not too blurry even back here. So when you take a landscape photograph, you have a large depth of field. That's what's in front from front to back. And in landscape photography, in general, you want to have a large depth of field. But when you take a close-up, the closer you are to your subject, the less depth of field you have. And if I don't know how close you can see it, but two of the stamens are in focus and one isn't. The hairs on this part are in focus, but these are falling off because this is falling away. So when you do macro photography, you have maybe a ½ an inch to a ¼ of an inch of depth of field.
And you're how close to this flower when you take that picture?
Well, the flowers, maybe an inch long, inch and a half.
You're right up there.
So here's a good example of something that's not the rule of thirds. I put it in the middle. So the other thing that I think about is what angle of view do I want to have? You're walking on the trail and you see a flower you like and you think, oh, I want to get a photo. First of all, get close, because I've seen people take pictures of a beautiful flower and they're really far away and nobody has any idea what it is why you took the picture. So I can almost never be too close. And this was taken from the top. So you can take a flower from the top. Let's go to the next one. Here's one that's from the side. And actually, these little guys are practically the only thing that's in focus. But I decided that was the most important, and it's taken from the side. Sometimes you want to think about trying something from underneath. So this California poppy, you're looking, I was close to the ground and looking up at it.
So with your macro photography, you're using a lot of the soft focus part to really just set the stage and the canvas.
Right. And you can do focus stacking, which is a system of taking a series of photos with different parts of the photo in focus, and you get a lot in focus that way. But I actually like the art of what is it you want to get in focus. And so this is kind of off from the side. So I didn't take it from the top and I didn't take it from the side, but it's kind of offside.
And what type of day are you taking most of these? Do you use the golden hour or?
I don't think the golden hour makes that difference, much of a difference with flowers.
So you can go out anytime, you can sleep late.
Right, and sometimes you would like to have soft light, so you want to go out when it's cloudy. But other times the shadows really add something, like with California poppies, the shadows are just amazing. So you have to go out and see what's there. I included this one because this is a story about backgrounds. So when you look at this photo, your eye goes to this probably granite in the background, and then you've got this bud over here, and you've got this. So I love insects in flowers, but they're not always attractive. So, and then this, that's not too good. And this one, this poor little guy has his nose right in the corner. He can hardly breathe, so it's too close to the corner. So if I had been more aware when I took this picture, I might have shaded this. I might have very gently moved this bud over here. I would have flicked this and I would have stepped back so I had a little more space here. Well, I didn't do it, but you can do anything in Photoshop. So this is so it's something I could have done in the field, but I did it in Photoshop just to show you what happens when you get rid of the distractions. So I filled this in, I cloned that out, I cloned out and I added a little space here. And I wouldn't say it's a perfect photo, but it's certainly, there's no question what I wanted you to look at. Whereas here, your eye goes over here, it goes over there.
That's a great convenience of Photoshop, that you can actually add space back into the photo.
Right. And I usually try to do what I can in the field, but I think I was at 10,000 feet and was a little tired, so
I didn't
do it. Yeah, I didn't do it. So this is the last of the demo, and because the depth of field is so shallow, what you choose is important. And you as the photographer, you're the artist, you get to choose what's in focus. And so in this image, I used these as being in focus. So I oriented myself so they were the same distance from the camera. But I could have had this part be in focus. I could have had this be in focus. I could have had this be in focus. So you don't have much to work with, and you get to choose what you have in focus.
I love the way the flame is on in here, and the light is just beaming out.
Mariposa lilies are just so amazing.
So that's a lot of color, but I understand you also have a passion for black and white.
I do.
And did you bring some of those in today?
I did. We'll see if are they up there yet. So this is in Death Valley, which is, the dunes in Death Valley are beautiful. And what I love about black and white is it's the lines, the textures, and the patterns. And so you can really see that in this photograph with the lines taking you in to the photo, and then you have the lines of the clouds coming down the other way, and then the tree off to the right.
It gives you an inner boundary to that photograph, so your eyes don't get lost entirely.
And I've always been looking for like the perfect curve on a dune. And this is pretty close. Sometimes people ask me if that little bush there, I put it there, but there are no footprints. So it was there, and I stationed myself. When you're taking a picture, you can move up and down, you can get closer and farther, and you can go from left to right. And I stationed myself so that that little bush was right in the way. That's in Nevada.
I like the fact that you let insects hang in your flowers sometimes, and then a bush too.
I do. Clouds are wonderful things in black and white. So this is Hubbard Glacier in Alaska, and we got there, it was a little cloudy, and then the clouds, the low clouds, burned off, and we just had these fabulous clouds. So that's where that is
As we look at some more of these, I'd like to talk about, so what do you do with these photographs and the photos that you take?
Well, one of the wonderful things about digital photography is that you can do anything with your photos. So I do prints, and hence the Pacific Art League and Gallery House. Those give me a chance to share my photographs. I also share them with Peninsula Open Space Trust and environmental volunteers, and some other environmental organizations. Since I don't do people, I can't do the people issues I care about, but the open space and preservation issues. This is from Iceland, and I was able to use it actually was the edge of a walkway to hold the camera steady and get those incredible lines. And then the blocks it's a volcanic area, and the blocks are hexagonal shaped from the columns. So
I went there last year too. If you're a photographer, you have to go.
It's true. It is true.
But you've also been to the Galapagos.
I have been to the Galapagos.
And you've made a book here, I see, of your
I did,
travels there. That's
indeed.
another thing you do with your photographs.
It is. I went to the Galapagos and had a wonderful time, and decided that I wanted my own coffee table book. So I called it Dragons, Pirates, and Clowns, because the dragons are the iguanas and the pirates are the birds, and the clowns are, of course, the boobies, particularly the blue-footed booby, because they do really strange things.
So do you recommend to photographers that they take that step of going to a book and a collection, or
Absolutely.
printing them up any way you can?
Right. This is done by Blurb, which allows you to do the formatting any way you want. And so I've always done Blurb books, but there are a lot of other companies that do books. You choose your photos, you do what you want with them, you send them off, and they send you a book. It's not inexpensive, but before digital, you couldn't. I wouldn't be able to have a book.
So I know you've been in quite a few shows here on the peninsula, and you are in Gallery House and Pacific Art League, and you participate in the Silicon Valley Open Studios.
I do, and I think so. I joined. A friend of mine asked me to come to her home. She had it out in her garden, beautiful garden, and so I met other artists and had another chance to share my photography. And I've done it there, and then I did it at Gallery House, and there are educational programs, so you can learn how to price your photographs. How do you decide how much you should charge if you're going to sell them, and then you're in the directory. And my best sale was to Kaiser, and that's because they were looking in the directory for the kind of photographs they wanted in their facility. So I've really appreciated being part of Silicon Valley Open Studios.
That's great. And I see you brought 2 cameras here today.
I did.
And so what do you shoot with?
I'm now shooting with Sony mirrorless. I said I was a late bloomer. So my Nikons, which I loved, got kind of heavy to carry around. So mirrorless are lighter, and this is my macro lens. So I do the flowers with this, but this has a 24 to 600 millimeter lens. So I got it partly because it was lighter and partly because of the long lens. I was going to Alaska to do bears, and so you don't want to be too close to the bears, right? So the 600 millimeter lets you get wonderful pictures.
Gives you enough of a head start if they come after you.
Right. And as I said, I only have to run faster than you do.
and a little bit of advice to photographers who are starting out now that digital cameras are actually really quite good, no matter what they're like. What kind of programs do you think that they should start out with?
Well, I think even if what you use is an iPhone, but you are a smartphone, you would like to step your photography up, join a camera club, because it's full of people. So they're real. It's not just online. They're real people, and you talk to them. You get the support you want. When I started, I really didn't know anything about photography, and everything I learned in the beginning was because I was part of the camera club. And supporting people, mentors, you see lots of photos with commentary, and now YouTube has everything you could ever want about using your camera. So there are a lot of ways to learn.
And when you go for a walk, what is it that you're looking for or at, or how does something strike you?
Well, that's a good question. And one of the things I like about photography is it's changed the way I see. So when I'm out, hiking, I'm looking at the flowers, I'm looking for insects, I'm looking for patterns. If I'm in Utah and you have these, so it isn't just this big, beautiful scene, but what are the patterns that you can isolate? I just look for shadows to give dimension to things, give leading lines to give dimension to things. So all those things make a difference.
Okay. So we'll take a look at a few more of your photographs here as we wrap up the show. Oh my gosh.
I envisioned that when I went and we were with horses, and I thought, I want to get a close-up of one eye. So
You succeeded in that. That's
Yeah,
fabulous.
so I love
The lines
that. I
and the
love
colors,
that.
really
Yeah.
the hue in black and white becomes
Right.
very critical.
Right. Right. And this was also, you know, the lines coming down in the snow, a little bit of cloud, the reflection of the cloud in the lake. As I said, the beautiful lines and textures. I've more recently done a little more wildlife photography, so that's the bear at Brooks Falls. Looking for the fish, it was a little early, so he just kept sitting there going, somebody told me there were going to be fish here. And this was along the road, so we were using the car as a blind, and I just thought this moose was so funny. The eye and the teeth, just really enjoyed getting that shot. And this was from the air, because you go to Katmai National Park and you have to fly in a pontoon plane, and the patterns on the ground were just so fabulous. I love that little S-curve and the trees around it. And in May, I went to South Africa to do wildlife photography. So this is a kudu at the watering hole. Loved getting those shots. And we followed 3 male cheetahs, and they posed for us. And they're so beautiful. And I recently went to Eastern Washington, which is called the Palouse, and it's these wonderful rolling hills. So it's the shadows, it's the patterns. I guess that's, if there's anything that ties my photography together, it would be the patterns and the shapes.
This is a wonderful example of the broad range of what you do.
Right.
So because when you said macro and black and white, it's clear that you have colors, and this composite that you put together here is spectacular.
Thank you.
So I really want to thank you for coming to join us today and bringing these photographs to us. And I really encourage people to come and see her work in person. Check out her website, which is addresses on the show here. Because when you see these photographs and you have the time to really study them up close and personally, it is really great.
Thank you very much.
All right. So we hope you really enjoyed this visit with Judy Kramer. She has lots to show you in real life and not across the video, so I hope you'll check it out. I hope when the Open Studios come along that you will look up Silicon Valley Open Studios. They produce a fabulous catalog that also serves as a guide, so you can look and see what kind of art do those artists have. Judy, I really am impressed with this, and I love the first opening shot that you had of the bee.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.